All right, good day, everybody. Andrew King here, editor-in-chief with NWC, and I'll be joined momentarily by our senior editor, Michael Rain. Appreciate you taking some time out of your workday, in most cases, to join us for the webinar, Maximize Your Media Coverage, Tips for Submitting News and Story Ideas to the Media. So yeah, basically our goal here is to just throw out some tips and ideas to make it easier for you, all of our great partners, to submit editorial content, product news, company news, etc., for our various trade publications and their related online properties. Now, a lot of these tips are going to be universally applicable to when you're trying to solicit coverage for anything from other media outlets, but are all kind of specific to NWC and our family of publications, which we'll talk about momentarily. So again, I'm Andrew. We'll hear from Mike in a moment. There's a little bit about us. Most importantly, our contact information. If you don't have it, when it comes to submissions, we'll of course tell you the proper channels to submit content in a moment. But with any questions, comments, concerns about the webinar, about anything going forward, please feel free to reach out to us as need be. And here's a quick overview of what we're talking about. Our goal is to be very brief, direct and to the point, and to focus on questions and discussions from you. If there's anything you'd like to know about, you can submit a question in the text field of your interface there, and Mike and I can take that up. Another quick thing to mention is our handouts. We put together 5 PDF files, one of which is just a notepad style breakdown of the presentation. If you want to print that off to make notes or just to have on file for some of these keywords, email addresses, etc. You'll also find there we've got 2 short PDFs, basically how to write a press release documents, one source from MIT, one from the American Library Association. Note that these aren't in the context of music or pro audio or the industries that we're focusing on here, but rather just have some general tips for effective press releases. We've also got The Elements of Style, a very well-known book about writing, and yeah, just some things to give you some resources, things to chew on that'll ultimately help you with your media outreach efforts. So in a moment, I'm going to walk you through our 4 magazines and their related online properties. We'll do that really quickly because I know a lot of you are very familiar. Talk about the difference between editorial and advertising, at least from NWC's perspective. We'll talk about what the content of each includes and the general timelines with our family of magazines in terms of when we need editorial submissions versus when we start soliciting advertising for our specific issues. Again, press@nor.com is the email address for sending any press releases, anything that you're looking to get included into the magazine. Mike oversees that mailbox very, very carefully. Press@nor.com, photo, text, and then at the end or at any point during, if we've got a pertinent question, we'll jump right on it. Otherwise, we'll save those for the end. So really quickly, Canadian Musician, of our 4 magazines, this is, I guess, for lack of a better term, the least applicable to what we're discussing today. Our attendees are from our supplier partners, manufacturers, distributors, and so we're talking a bit more in relation to the trade magazines that will follow. But in Canadian Musician, we do have an industry event listing. We do have extensive section, several pages dedicated to new products and technologies, which of course we invite submissions for from you and our other partners. And Road Test. Each issue of Canadian Musician has 3 full-page product reviews where basically we send a demo or NFR software code to one of our writers. They experiment with it. Well, that's basically how all reviews work. But we do 3 in every issue and are always open to suggestions on products, technologies, books, etc. to review. Canadian Music Trade. This is the magazine covering the musical instrument, the musical products trade, specifically in Canada, but obviously with wide applicability to the global market. Been published since 1979, and here a lot more relevant sections for our audience today. Endorser Update, where we've got news on who's playing which brands, that runs with some photos. Events, again, an industry event calendar. News pertains to everything from staff appointments, your company news, new lines, distribution changes, event previews and recaps, whether that's trade events or say drum clinics, that kind of thing, major company milestones, interesting happenings from just the industry in general, lots of surveys and report findings, etc. We've got our faces section where we've got articles and personal news updates from people in the industry, a very personable part. Product news, much like Canadian Musician Hot Gear, just a new product overview where, of course, we're always looking for new submissions, and supplier spotlight. So manufacturers, distributors, publishers, anyone supplying Canadian retailers, we choose one of those companies each and every issue and do a page long story. So these are all different parts of the magazine where we are inviting submissions and ideas, of course, from our partners. Professional Lighting and Production, our newest magazine, published since '97. This is for lighting, video staging, rigging, live event pros across the country and around the world. Sections here, agenda, which again is the industry events listings. News flashes, same industry news section, so company news, much like Canadian music trade, but for the lighting and pro visuals market. In focus is page-long profiles on various industry professionals, always after ideas for that one. Product spots, again, new and featured products and technologies. And our project update section here is basically a page dedicated entirely to application news. So certain brand or product out on a certain tour or installation, etc. We want to highlight that, talk about why the gear was chosen, etc. And our feature content for Professional Lighting and Production is also driven in large part by submissions from our partners. We're largely application-based, so major tours, installs, events, festivals, etc. Although we also have educational how-to features, things like primers on video technology. Some of our features are panel style, where we'll talk with a number of professionals on a given topic, some presenting Q&A, etc. Always after ideas for these. And finally, professional sound, very similar to Professional Lighting and Production in its overall makeup, though of course our readership here is the pro audio community from across Canada and around the world, every arm of the industry. Here we've got our itinerary, again, events listings, new products, profiles, page long on industry pros in audio, project file, again, application stories, what gear is out on which tours, etc. Signals is the industry news section, company news, milestones, anniversaries, etc. Tests are page-long reviews, and again, our feature stories here, very much application-based, how-to panel style. So professional sound and professional lighting and production, fairly similar in structure and the type of content we're inviting. So thanks for joining me for the Around the World of the publications. Now, just a quick reminder, refresher, when it comes to editorial versus advertising with NWC, these are very separate, very distinct parts of the company, which is intentional. Unlike, I guess we'll just say, other trade publications where there's an obvious correlation between who's advertising and who's getting written about. In our case, editorial decisions are made entirely independently from who's advertising and vice versa. As our publisher, Jim Norris, has said, I think it's a great quote, editorial informs, advertising sells. And we mention that just so that, well, you know, when you're trying to plan your marketing and promo plans, what you're submitting to us is going to be things that are informing the marketplace. Highly encourage you to consider advertising when you're looking to drive home custom messaging. Generate sales, generate opportunities, etc. And the part to highlight here is that these operate on different timelines. Basically, our editorial is put together, the magazines are compiled well ahead of time. When we really start to solicit advertising, it's usually when the magazine is pretty much in place, save for a few sections that we'll talk about momentarily, which we echo just so that it's clear that the more lead time we get on editorial submissions, the better, as Mike will tell us in a moment. Or I guess I can tell you right now, as much lead time as possible is always welcome. We understand that time is a luxury we don't always have, and especially with distribution partners that are a lot of time are operating the next step down from the manufacturers. You know, lead time is great. If we're ever in a pinch, though, we're of course very receptive to working with you and trying to come up with win-win, mutually beneficial arrangements, but as a general rule. Now, in a moment, I'll let Mike take over here. As editor-in-chief, I'm the one that's slotting our feature content. So in the trade magazine, specifically Canadian Music Trade, Professional Sound, and Professional Lighting and Production, a lot of our content, again, is based on applications. And of course, we always invite our partners to say, for example, we're out a lot of gear on this major tour by artist X. It's hitting these markets at this time. Are you interested? That's something we can jump on for a multi-page feature story. These are months in advance, so the more lead time that we have on any of these type of projects, the better. But then for the other sections that we walk through, I'll let Mike take over here and just fill you in on his timelines and how you can work within those to get timely information placed quickly and effectively. Mike, at last, take it away.
Thanks a lot. And I guess I'm going to go through first of all, what I generally handle is the regular sections of the magazines, the reoccurring sections of the magazine. So not just news and new product sections. It also includes things like endorser updates in CMT, project file in PS, or project update in PLP. And pretty much any of the sections that reoccur, or I shouldn't say any of them, but a lot of the sections that reoccur, I kind of handle. So as far as timing, like Andrew was just talking about, with the exception of news, the goal is generally to get these sections done 2 months in advance, which means that in order to be included in, well, at least the next issue, generally speaking, I got to have things, 2 months in advance. So for product sections, which I know is a section that probably a lot of the folks watching this are interested in getting their brands into, say for January issue of Canadian Musician, for instance, that product section was done back in early November. That said, there are a couple of things that I'm always happy to get input from the the marketing and PR folks at the various distributors and companies. One is, and this is especially the case around something like NAMM, where some of the major brands will release a dozen or more products all at once. And generally speaking, for something like the product sections, I only include one product per brand, and only 2 or 3 products per distributor if it's a major distributors. So that said, when there are a number of products, like I said, like around NAMM time, from the major brands, I'm happy to get input from folks to say, this is kind of the game-changing product, or this is the big new product that we really want to get out there. Because if there's something, if I'm looking at 12 products and one's the 8th iteration of a tuner and the other really is something, big and bold and new, we want to give our readers, the interesting stuff and the game-changing stuff. So I'm happy to kind of get that input and take that into consideration when I'm putting together these types of sections. Same goes for, especially in the professional lighting and professional audio worlds, I get a lot of press releases about project application stuff, what we in the magazines call the project file and project updates. These are essentially spotlights on tours and installations and that kind of stuff. Kind of what I'm always looking for there is all the information I need in the Word document, and does it have an engaging high-res photo? And we'll get into photos shortly here on the next slide. But those are always what I'm looking for. Yeah, sorry, I'm kind of getting ahead of ourselves here. So Andrew, if you want to go to the next slide, so we're not talking about timelines, but yeah, in terms of timelines, long story short, 2 months in advance for the exception of news. And news being what it is, we like to make it as timely as possible, which is a challenge with print magazines. But for that reason, the news sections generally get done typically 2 weeks before they go to the printers.
Indeed. Before I let Mike get into specifically what we're after from our submissions in terms of both the text, the copy, as well as imagery, which we just touched on for a moment there, I do want to highlight that, yeah, with news, as Mike had just said, we try to keep that open until the 11th hour, just with the nature of industry news. And again, we want to best serve our readers with important, valuable content, which in many cases is the same goal for you folks. So with that, a lot of these are general rules, but we're always happy to try and make exceptions if it's going to be mutually beneficial, which is often the case. So anyway, sorry, Mike, I'll let you come back in here in terms of what we're after with text submissions for any of the sections we've touched on thus far.
Yeah. This as far as submissions, I'm just looking at the email there, press at nwcworld.com, which I oversee that as well as my own personal email, obviously. This is kind of more specific to us rather than I don't know how other editors elsewhere run their email accounts. But I'll say for us, if it's something not super timely or super pressing, please send it to press@nwcworld.com, and I'll certainly see it and do what I need with it. But if for anything urgent, because it's just the inbox I tend to have up in front of me at all times, anything urgent, send directly to me, which is the mrain@nwcworld.com. But yeah, they get into the more general stuff here. As far as documents, Word or plain text document is ideal. So yeah, I get a lot of stuff that is in a PDF. I can use it, it's fine. Like I can copy paste out of it, but then it requires a lot of formatting. Essentially what we're getting at here is with a Word or plain text document, it's all about kind of making things at ease. And this isn't just for us. Any editor, editorial or person, journalist, whatever, anywhere will essentially say, and I'm sure this goes with all of our jobs, ease is always appreciated. The less kind of just, I don't know what you call it, formatting as such I have to do, the easier it is to get it done and to use it. So a Word document is always appreciated. With that, like I just say, minimal formatting and no embedded graphics, logos. This is me personally. I'm looking for high-res photos to be included in a link to say like a Dropbox or WeTransfer, or to be attached directly to the email. Any embedded graphics, photos, logos that are in a Word document, this is what I do, so take what you want with it, but I immediately delete that stuff. I open the Word document, remove all that, change it to Times New Roman, and essentially just get it all universally, essentially getting the whole thing looking universal, so that way I can go about my editing as needed. In terms of what the press releases should be saying, like it says here, direct and to the point. In journalism, which is what's called the inverted pyramid style, essentially put all the most important information up front, and essentially just whether it's news, whether it's a product or release and description, that kind of stuff. Anything that you want to make sure gets included in the final product, put towards the top. Essentially, especially the case in print when space is at a premium, generally the rule is you cut from the bottom. So put all the most important stuff at the top and kind of work your way through it that way. Use factual language. This is an important one. I know there's, websites and other trade magazines and stuff out there that will essentially just print whatever they're given. And, if you want to make it really flowery and hyperbolic for them, I guess you can. But I know for us, we try to essentially just keep it factual. Again, this applies to both news and product news and all the other sections, really. All the hyperbolic language about it being the biggest, greatest thing that has ever happened, pretty much is going to get removed. There's some leeway there if it's in a direct quote from a person. We don't include quotes in product sections, but in news, quotes are useful. If it's in a quote, then we'll keep it. But generally speaking, if the publicist or whoever's writing the press release is putting in all kinds of hyperbolic language, it's just an annoyance to me. It's going to get removed, and we just want to keep it to the facts. Proper contact information. It's especially helpful if it's proper contact information for the Canadian contact, whether that's the distributor or sales rep or whatever it is. If it's a news item about a person being promoted, a person being hired, whatever it may be, contact information for them is always helpful. Point form, basic outlines, always welcome. Yeah, our job is the writers. That's what we do every day. I know a lot of people aren't comfortable or at least confident in their writing abilities. If you want to keep it kind of very point form or to the point and just kind of include the facts and and other information as needed, and kind of leave it up to us to kind of put it in a narrative style, that's no problem. Maybe just give us a heads up in the email, whatever it is. But I get that, and I don't have a problem with it as long as everything I need is there to work with.
Right on. Before we move over to photos, which actually is really our last point of business here, if anyone does have questions, comments, concerns, anything, please feel free to submit via text here, and we'll field those momentarily. A couple of things to touch on, though. Again, these are guidelines. Maybe we'll say strong guidelines, but I want to make it very clear, we will not disregard a product or a release or submission based on whether or not these are followed. That said, in publishing, in a lot of cases, when we're right at the 11th hour finalizing an issue, we may need extra product spots or news items or content to find a home. And it's in those cases where it's the content that comes in properly formatted with, again, very factual language, where it's going to need minimal attention from us, where we can get you some extra ink. So bear that in mind. And another thing, with regards to just the facts with marketing, language, etc. Again, in that case, we're not going to disregard something. And as Mike said, we can go through a release and edit it so that a lot of that hype marketing language gets taken out, and it is very factual. The benefit to having the content come in that way, though, is that we're going to be interfering, quote unquote, with it a lot less, and thus,
good point.
The messaging as you'd like it delivered in terms of key product highlights or job highlights, in the example of, say, a product or application story, respectively, is going to come off a lot closer to, again, the messaging and the focuses that you'd like, as opposed to us in a lot of cases having to change adjectives. And I just hope that's clear. But bottom line is, we want your content regardless. We're going to work with you to get it in there. But following these steps is really just going to make it easier to get things in a timely fashion, and again, as close to on message as everyone wants. So on the visual side here, with accompanying images, I guess as a general rule, before I hand it over to Mike, outside of event listings like the agenda and itinerary page, which even they do have a visual element, consider ensuring that there's an image, or better yet, multiple image options for anything you're submitting, anything you're putting out. And I'll let Mike talk a bit about those specs and why that's the case.
Yeah, generally when we're talking print, and this is pretty standard across, essentially all print outlets will tell you the same thing. The ideal is to get photos that are at least 300 dpi at 4 inches by 4 inches, or that's 1200 pixels by 1200 pixels. That'll ensure that the picture comes out, crisp and looking good, and the colors looking good in print. There's more flexibility there on the web, but I'd much rather start with a nice high-res photo that is suitable for print, and then compress it or do whatever I need to it for the web, because it doesn't really work the other way around. Crisp, clear, and well lit, that's kind of self-explanatory, but you've all seen photos, when it looks good and when it doesn't, and when it's very dark. But I'm kind of crisp and clear is kind of the thing that I'm constantly surprised with. I do get a lot of blurry photos. To be fair, sometimes you zoom in on a photo, or at least our art director will zoom in on a photo to spruce it up, or what she does with it. And sometimes it's not uncommon for her to come back to me and be like, hey, this photo is actually quite blurry. Can you go back and ask for a better one? So in terms of, and something to just add for the resolution stuff, a lot of people kind of, if they don't deal with photos regularly, they're not even sure what DPI and all that's talking about. Essentially, the photo that comes off of a digital camera is high res. So anything that comes off of a digital camera before it gets compressed or anything like that, the raw file, whether it's JPEG or PNG or anything like that that comes directly off the camera, is most likely going to be high res and suitable to use. Even most modern smartphones will take a high res photo nowadays. You just have to be careful about the phone compressing it if you're emailing it and that kind of stuff. But the raw file that comes off of most cameras and phones nowadays is high res. I'm only wary about phone photos only because they tend to be blurry. They're just less stable in people's hands when you're taking the picture. But the reality is a lot of phones nowadays even have the capability of high res photos. News applications versus product reviews. Essentially, what we in most editorials people are looking for a news item versus a product item is quite different. For news, essentially, personnel shots, building shots, that kind of thing. It's important to say no logos alone or superimposed. And this is our kind of personal policy. We don't use product photos in the news section. Because we don't want to be seen as, endorsing it or advertising a product, essentially. So say, a common type of news item is a distribution announcement. So-and-so is now distributing X brand in Canada. Typically what I'll go back and ask for is a photo of the relevant, say, product manager holding some product from the new distributed line. That way you kind of get both sides of it in there. You get the product in there, but you get a person, and it's not just kind of an advertising product photo. Consider professionalism and personnel shots. Professionalism, essentially just looking for a good, interesting photo that makes sense for the news item. Professionalism doesn't need to just be, your head and shoulders headshot against a blank background. I get a lot of those. They're fine. I use them when it makes sense because it's an item about something being hired or promoted or whatever. And that's fine. But I'm happy to see photos that show some individuality or some character or personality. What you don't want is a photo of someone hanging out on the beach when the photo is about them. It's about their careers, essentially. So just make sure the photo makes sense for what the news item is about effectively. A thing that I'm surprised I sometimes see a lot is a photo that was clearly cropped out of a photo taken at a party or something like that. It's like a head and shoulders shot, and the person was just cropped out of a larger photo that you can always tell included other people and was taken in a restaurant or something like that. So just make sure the photos make sense. It is a case by case thing, but I think most people have the judgment there to know, does this photo make sense for what this news item is about, and is it professional? But just remember, that doesn't mean it can't show any personality. No logos, load or superimposed. The branding within the photo is welcome. That's kind of self-explanatory. We don't run just photos to accompany a news item. We also don't don't run logos, I should say, alone with news items. And we also don't use photos that have logos superimposed over them or as a watermark. If there's a logo on the wall behind the person or on the shirt or something, that's totally fine. Sometimes even makes sense, obviously. But yeah, other than that, that's pretty self-explanatory. Andrew, am I forgetting anything here?
I think we're in good shape. Although here we are at 2:30 or 1:30 Eastern on the nose. And yeah, we want to take questions if anyone's got any. Otherwise, really appreciate the time and help. I realize that not everything here is relevant to everyone that joined in, but in general, again, our goal is to just offer some best practices that are going to help you not just selfishly with NWC and our magazines, but in terms of just gaining more traction and earning favor with other press partners, media outlets, whether they're trade or for the general public. So yeah, if there's any questions, feel free to toss those in. There were a couple at the beginning, but we've touched on those now.
And
Yeah, I guess.
I'm just going to add in there, when I was talking about photos, I mostly focus on new stuff. I'm just going to say real quick, in terms of product section photos, it's kind of the reverse. We are looking for a product only photo, not the product set up in a shot with a bunch of other stuff. So yeah, high res product only photo with a plain or at least non-cluttered background. And yeah, that's pretty straightforward.
Mhm. A question here about MailChimp list. This is a great question. MailChimp is a very popular platform for disseminating info, especially, yeah, in this case, hundreds of press contacts. Is a blast less ideal to receive content? Not necessarily with MailChimp, that's HTML. Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, but in my experience, it's pretty easy to copy and paste text out of an HTML file. You get a bit of, in some cases, there can be some formatting relics, but it's much easier and more fluid than with a PDF. And
Yes.
like I hope we made clear from the beginning, like MailChimp, we don't expect everyone to change their practices based solely on us if it's something that you're doing for good reason, but rather just wanted to give you a perspective from the people receiving the content in case that there were any misconceptions or any confusion about why your systems were the way they were. But no, to answer this question, MailChimp is great. And again, like we're not asking you to take on extra responsibilities or burdens, but rather if it's a simple change that's going to make for a win-win, make it easier for us to get the content you want as you've presented it into a home in a timely fashion, and just check off all those boxes. That's what we're here for. So limited HTML formatting, plain text is great with MailChimp. And what's great about MailChimp as well is that it's very easy to add a download tab direct to a high-res image. So when that email lands in a mailbox, it's not too big, but right there is a link to one or multiple high-res photos that we can grab instantly as need be. It doesn't clog the inbox. Thank you for raising that point, because that's a good one.
I actually love that. I'm totally cool with that.
All right. Keep coming here. Let's see. Are there any Newswire services we're using to watch the news, or is all the content from the trades? Thank you. Another great question. We use multiple Newswire services, Google keywords. A lot of the news, a good portion of it, especially when it comes to products or applications, like things that are very company specific. A good percentage of our submissions come from our manufacturer, distributor, supplier partners, which is great because when it comes to new products, new technologies hitting the market, the latest tours, in a lot of cases, there isn't a more direct source to that information. But when it comes to things like industry statistics, figures, in some cases, maybe even less, we'll say, news that looks at things in a less negative light. Yeah, we absolutely have other sources that we consult and that we're actively monitoring for that type of news. But our focus here is really on things that are going to be submitted by our partners. But thank you again for asking for clarification. Appreciate everybody's attention. I think that may be the end of it here. Thank you again. We know that your time is very valuable, and hope that everything here has been laid out very clearly. If you have very specific questions, please, again, feel free to hit up Mike and I. I will put our email addresses back up here. Those are our direct contact email contacts, and press@nwcworld.com is the best home base for any releases, things that you're submitting that aren't, say, direct questions, personalized messages, etc. Mike, I think we're good to sign off here. Did you have anything you wanted to add in before we do?
No, I'm sure I'll remember stuff soon as we get off here. But yeah, I'm happy to take any questions or requests for clarifications by email.
Outstanding. For registering, you will get a link to a recording of this, whether you want to reconsult or better yet, share with anyone else within your organization that might benefit from the info. Please do. Otherwise, thanks for the kind words. A few folks just saying thanks for the info. We appreciate it. We value your time. We'll let you get back to your day, and yeah, look forward to working together going forward to strengthen these industries that we're all a part of. That's really it. We're all working to the same end. So we look forward to more collaboration. All the best on this lovely Tuesday, and happy holidays too. Hope you're looking forward to a great set.
Thank you, everybody.